Some betrayals don't break you immediately. They replace you. Quietly, confidently, like you were never part of the story at all. That's what my husband did to me. He didn't just cheat. He didn't just leave. He erased me from my own home and replaced me with someone else. But what he didn't know was simple. I didn't disappear. I rebuilt. And 6 months later, I came back as the owner of the house he thought he controlled. My name is Isabella Carter. I am 35 years old and I live in Florida, USA. And this is the story of how my husband kicked me out for another woman, and how I returned to the same house with legal ownership and the final word. It started like most betrayals do, with distance, small lies, and a feeling I couldn't quite prove at first. My husband Daniel began changing slowly. He stopped answering calls, started coming home late, started guarding his phone like it contained another life. And maybe it did. Then came the signs I couldn't ignore. Perfume I didn't wear, messages he deleted too quickly, and conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. I confronted him once. He didn't deny anything. He just looked tired of pretending. "I think we should separate," he said. Not angry. Not emotional. Just final. I asked him the obvious question. Is there someone else? He hesitated. And that hesitation was my answer. 2 weeks later, I was out of the house. No proper discussion. No real closure. Just a suitcase at the door, and a man who already decided I didn't belong there anymore. But what hurt more than leaving was learning what came next. Because I didn't just lose my husband. I lost my home. To her. She moved in immediately. Not slowly. Not secretly. Openly. Like she had always belonged there. Friends stopped calling. Family stayed neutral. And I became a chapter everyone wanted to forget. Except I didn't forget. I studied. I planned. I rebuilt quietly in the background of my own life. I didn't have much after leaving. But I had one thing they underestimated. Time. And awareness. While they were living comfortably in my old home, I started asking questions they never expected. About ownership. About financial structure. About property history. And that's when I found something important. The house wasn't fully transferred. Not legally complete. Not finalized the way they thought it was. Just partially controlled. A gap. A mistake. A door left slightly open. And I walked through it. Legally. Carefully. Quietly. Months passed. I worked, saved, consulted lawyers, checked records. Not for revenge. For correction. Because I refused to accept being erased from something I helped build. 6 months later, I received the confirmation. The property ownership had been legally transferred to me. In full compliance. Finalized. Recognized. I didn't call him immediately. I didn't warn them. I didn't argue. Because some truths don't need announcements. They need arrivals. The day I returned, I didn't come as the woman who was kicked out. I came as the owner of the house. I stood outside the same door that once closed on me. And rang the bell. When Daniel opened it, his expression changed instantly. Confusion first. Then recognition. Then disbelief. Because I wasn't supposed to be there. Not anymore. Behind him she appeared. Smiling. Until she saw me. And then the smile disappeared. I looked at both of them calmly. And said, "I think you're living in my house." Silence. Immediate. Heavy. Daniel laughed nervously. This is not funny. I nodded. I agree. Then I handed him the documents. His eyes scanned the papers slowly. Then stopped. Then read again. Harder this time. Because the truth wasn't emotional. It was legal. And legality doesn't bend for relationships. The color drained from his face. No, he whispered. But whispering doesn't change ownership. The woman stepped back slightly. Because she finally understood. She wasn't part of a relationship. She was part of a mistake. And I just stood there. Not shouting. Not crying. Not angry. Because I no longer needed any of those things. I had something stronger. Proof. The silence after Daniel finished reading the documents felt unreal. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just final. Because deep down he already knew the papers were real. That's why he stopped arguing so quickly. His hands tightened around the documents. This doesn't make sense, he said. But legality doesn't care about confusion. Only records. I stayed calm. The ownership transfer was completed 3 weeks ago, I said quietly. He stared at me. Like he was trying to find the version of me that used to beg for explanations. But she wasn't there anymore. His mistress stepped closer nervously. What's going on? She asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Because how do you explain to someone that the house you promised them isn't yours anymore? I finally looked at her directly. You should probably start packing. That sentence hit harder than yelling ever could. She looked shocked. Not because of me. Because of him. Because she realized he hadn't been fully honest with her either. Daniel stepped outside and lowered his voice. We can work this out. I almost smiled. Because 6 months ago, he had no interest in working things out. Back then, I was just someone standing outside with a suitcase. No, I replied calmly. You already made your decision 6 months ago. For the first time, I saw panic in his face. Real panic. Not about love. Not about marriage. About loss. Because now he understood something painful. He thought removing me from the house meant removing me from the future. But he forgot something important. People rebuild. The next few days moved quickly. Legal notices were delivered. Deadlines were established. And suddenly, the same man who once acted untouchable was asking for time. Friends started hearing what happened. And just like that, the story changed. Not because I defended myself loudly, but because reality became impossible to hide. The woman he moved into my home left first. Quietly. No dramatic goodbye. No confidence anymore. Because relationships built on betrayal rarely survive pressure. Daniel stayed longer. Trying to negotiate. Trying to explain. Trying to act like we were both victims of circumstances. But circumstances didn't sign those papers. He did. One evening, while he packed boxes in what used to be our bedroom, he looked at me and asked, Did you plan all this? I looked around the house slowly, then answered honestly, No. A pause. I planned to survive, this was just the result. That answer stayed with him. I could tell. Because for the first time he realized something. I didn't destroy his life. He destroyed his own stability and assumed I would stay broken forever. The day he finally left, the house felt strange. Quiet. Empty. But peaceful. He stood at the front door holding the last box. Looking at me like he wanted me to feel something. Regret maybe. Sadness. But all I felt was clarity. I never thought it would end like this, he said quietly. I nodded. Neither did I replied. But I also never thought you'd throw me out of my own home. He lowered his eyes. Because there was no defense left. Only consequences. After he left, I walked through every room slowly. The same rooms where I once cried quietly at night. The same kitchen where I felt invisible. The same hallway where I left carrying pieces of my life in trash bags. Now silent. Now mine again. And I realized something important. Revenge isn't always screaming. Sometimes it's rebuilding so completely that the people who hurt you are forced to watch you stand where they thought you'd never return. Weeks later, I renovated the house completely. Not because I hated the memories. Because I refused to live inside them. New paint. New furniture. New energy. A new beginning built where humiliation once lived. One afternoon, I stood near the front window holding coffee in my hands. Sunlight filled the living room. And for the first time in years, the house felt like home again. Not because someone loved me there, but because I finally chose myself there. And that was the part Daniel never expected. He thought kicking me out would end my story. Instead, it started a better one.